name's Gabriel Gutierrez, and I I've become a I've become a voice, an advocate, and a voice because I feel that there's four levels. For me, there was four levels for me in my recovery. So I was initially a victim of domestic abuse and coercive control. I became a parent from the abuse, and it was one of the darkest parts of my life. I've had dark parts of
Yeah.
my life, but this is by far this was by far
Yeah.
one of my darkest times. And you know, I'm 46 years old now, and and it's and a lot, but I want to say about 85, 90%. I was not really 90% of my life. I lived with um, what we call codependency, and
Yeah.
moderate to severe depression. Didn't know it though. Didn't know it at all. And it took, sadly, it took my most recent, the most recent attack, which happened in 2017, May of 2017, to really start acknowledging what it was, to start
What it
putting a
was.
name to the deterioration that was happening
Yeah.
inside of me. I mean, I was a part of the frustration with that was because I I moved here to California from New Jersey in October 1st of 2011, and I came here not really knowing what I was going to do other than just follow the
This is
normal
good.
routine of work and just kind of get through it. But there were bigger things happening with me that I wanted, and ultimately, the short end of it is that I formed a community for game development, game designers to connect with one another. Those on the business side, those on the technical side, to just join up and say, hey, there's a bunch of us here in Sacramento. We're just trying to make something happen. And, we had a group. I came in and formed it into an actual official presence, an actual official chapter of a nonprofit.
Nice.
And that went really well. It went really well. And for, there have been parts of my life where I felt that I was doing good, that I had some sort of meaning, but this was beyond, this had given me more meaning and value than I had ever expected. And it wasn't the plan. I wasn't looking to form or, run a community. I
Yeah.
was just looking to get a few people to help me make a game. This is what I just wanted to do. And it just became so much more than that.
So much more.
And it felt so wonderful to have, a 100% sense of purpose. I mean,
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
have been parts that have, 30%, maybe 50, 60% purpose, but this was very close to 100% at 100%. But through that, those skeletons remained.
Yeah.
They were in remission, if you will. They were,
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they were always there, and and I think back now to like, God, if I could just go back to then, but then my skeletons would come back, and
Yeah.
I don't, and so so it's that kind of thing of, I'm here now, and I have to keep putting value in what's happened with me now. So throughout this time, there were a couple of people in my life who had really said they wanted to support and they had good intentions, and I think at some fragments of things they meant it, but
Yeah.
there was there was something much more sinister going on, and it was um it became abusive, it became controlling, and it happened very, very slowly. Happened very, very slowly, very subtly, very in a very subtle way, and I just didn't see it because
Yeah.
I was raised to see the good in all. I was, that was me,
Sure.
and and unfortunately, that blinded me from a lot of things, because I grew up around a lot of conflict, and I just knew enough at a young age. I just despised conflict, but it's
Yeah.
also why I was not able to defend myself very well, because I just didn't want to be around the conflict. So,
Yeah.
you know, so, so now we fast forward toward, over the past few years where, you know, I, the quiet abuse became much louder. It became much more obvious. And it became louder because I started noticing it, and I started questioning it all. And
Yeah.
my abuser, did not like that. My abuser did not like that,
Sure. Well, of
and
course they won't, right?
yeah, no, they don't, and unfortunately, it led to what I didn't know at the time was something, um, just very sinister, very manipulative, and um, and then I was becoming a dad from that, and that was one of the hardest pills to swallow, it because now it's, the worst thing, the the worst, well, it's like I've read this in different places. It's like the best thing you can give an abuser is a child, because it's like, now they're never gonna let go, and now they're gonna seek new
Yeah.
things to, you know hold against you.
Hold it. Yeah. I was gonna say
And
hold over your head, right? Yeah.
right, yeah, and so it became, so it was just this multi-layered, level of, you know trauma that just started happening. And
Yeah.
again, I hadn't even used the word trauma. It was just like, I just felt lost. I just felt lost and
Yeah.
powerless. That was the most I could say at that time. And then the point finally came after going through a couple suicidal ideations, and I wasn't even in a dark place when it happened. I was doing something productive just to keep my brain going, and that's when
Yeah.
it started to happen, and it scared the hell out of me. And at that point, it was like, I've got to start to, someone's got to give.
Yeah.
And the final straw was about a year and a half. I want to say about a year and a half after, no, about 2 years after my kid was born. And we're talking March 2020. So, so of course that's like, we say March 2020, we all know on the surface
We all
what
know,
happened,
right?
what happened then.
Yeah.
But for me, there was something much, much more happening, where in that same month, the abusive behavior was normalized. It was normalized. I'll never forget this quote. "You may not have deserved it, but you had it coming," is what was
Mm.
said to me in front of my child.
Wow.
And
Wow.
he had just turned 2.
Two.
And at that point, it's, first of all, my kid doesn't need to hear something like that,
No.
and no, especially when he knows he's talking to me, and he hears those words. He may not know exactly what that means, but he's hearing those words be said to
He's
me.
close. Yeah.
Right, he's extremely close. and
Yeah.
and then I broke, like, okay, there, because throughout all that time, there's this faith, there's this hope that is just like,
This
this
isn't
madness
happening.
this madness has to stop at some
Yeah.
point. Like, is this all a joke? Like, this is,
Yeah.
you know and because it's funny, it's like, you see how people, good or bad, change when a kid comes into the picture.
Yeah.
And you start to see, you sort of, you question if it's like, is this their true colors? Like what
Yeah.
they say about when people drink, like when they're drunk, is this who they really are
Really
because
are.
they're drunk? And whatever the case may be, it's like, people, we could debate that. People, that could be debated all day. But for me, it's, you know, hearing that was it for me.
That was
And
it.
so I started seeking options on, who the hell do I even talk to
Yeah.
that will listen. Or, I mean, and in my head at that time, it's like, you kind of, you don't want to say,
Yeah.
have them believe you, but you really in the head, it's like, God, I really hope someone is just like, oh my God, are you okay?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. And, because by that point, I had only told a few people, and the reaction was mixed, and I'll never forget that. I'll never
Yeah.
forget that. It's because the people that I expected to push back didn't,
Didn't.
those who did, and vice versa.
And vice
And
versa.
I
Interesting.
think
Yeah.
and I think one of the most heartbreaking things. This was like salt on the wound. Is like those who went through it still judged me, and was like, you have not solved your stuff. If you're judging me, knowing you went through that too,
Yeah.
you
There's
have unresolved stuff, and I
there's still
talked to the
something that you
wrong
got to go
person.
through. Yeah.
And it's like, and I it's like, and like, it's like, and you don't want to feel like you talked to the wrong person, but it's like you did, and
You
so, but
did.
what, but it's, but, but I did it, and it's all good. But that was a huge lesson for me
Yeah.
regarding what I got to do, and how far I've got to take it and what not to do. And
Yeah.
so, because at that point, my career wasn't in mental health, or I was working in HR. So I was in HR recruitment, and I was already given up on, lost so much faith on that. So this was a massive turning point for me, right? To, to just say, okay, I've got to get my head wrapped around what is
What's going
happening,
on? Yeah.
because nothing made sense. Nothing made sense. But I'm glad I got to see the true colors of people, because now I'm different with them. Now I'm different with them.
Sure. I mean,
And
understandably, yeah.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. But but it's like, and the whole letting go, move on, none of that applies when trauma
Yeah.
comes into play. None of that
You
applies.
don't do
Like,
that. Yeah.
I wish it was something as easy as being able to move forward. I wish
Yeah.
it was, because I'm more than happy to diminish the pain. I am more than happy to diminish the
Yeah.
pain if it
Of
helps me
course.
sleep better at night, right? So I get to this point that I've now educated myself in mental health. I became certified in peer support, trauma support. I'm certified in RAP, which is a Wellness Recovery Action Plan. So I can do those things, and I help others, and I mentor and counsel others to help them get through it. And now with my indie game studio, where I started as just making games for fun. Now it's making games um, to tell my more of my story, pieces
Yeah.
of my story, and now it's personal. Now it's
Yeah.
all personal,
And that
and
changes everything at that point.
it really does. And it's funny because yeah, it's so funny because I didn't think I was worth that. I didn't think I
Yeah.
was worth it. I didn't think I should do that again.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I was deserving of that, but I did, and
Yeah.
I achieved some milestones several months
Yeah.
ago. Posting new things, sharing the story, sharing, and just really just not apologizing for any of it. And it's
Yeah.
like I can't apologize for it. And I think one of the hardest things from that was, how do I share this without having to worry about the perception that I'm just angry, that I'm
Yeah.
just
Oh
just
yeah.
so much rage. And it's like, you know what? If you don't feel anger and rage from these things, then it didn't really
Mm.
hit you. Like, it didn't.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Then I think you're just disregarding it, and I think you're just blocking it away.
Yeah.
And and I think you have to dive in, because like when I started learning about trauma, the first thing this professor says is, you need to look at it. You need to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
We have been raised to push it away. We've been raised to push all that away, and now we don't. And now he's like, nope, you
Nope.
gotta look at it. And so
Yeah.
now I'm able to say, my trauma is my sidekick. Trauma is my sidekick. I hold it right here beside me, and and it'll talk to me, and I'll start to have a little conversation with it. But I think, but what I've been putting into practice more, saying is listening to it say, don't go here.
Yeah.
Remember what happened. Remember how it felt. Instead of me saying, damn it, you're doing this again, or you just trying to knock me down. But no, what it's trying to say is, no, you asked me to be your sidekick and I'm going to be here,
And I'm going
but
to
I
be
got
here.
to remind you, remember why you're doing this. And that's what's happening.
And that's
And
what we
that's
use it.
been a daily practice for, I want to say several months. So not that long,
Yeah. Not in the
it's
scheme of
been
things.
right, but it's allowed me to have conversations like this, which is
Yeah.
why I appreciate when you were like, feel free to share whatever you want to share. I'm going to share everything. If your biggest complaint with me is that I overshared,
Great.
excellent, because it's like, God, he just would not stop.
No,
But that's the importance of this, because we don't get those opportunities to do that, because as I shared earlier, it's about who's listening and who's just hearing. And
yeah.
we need to align that, because as you
Yeah.
said, the conversation, it's that connection. We need that
Yeah.
more than ever, and in the hopes that other people who are going through this, who are, God
Do the
forbid that this
same.
has happened to, can just be like, I there's hope
Yeah.
somehow. So
Was there some kind of like societal aspect that made it more challenging, to accept that this was happening? You said that you just kind of like wake up each day and you're like, this can't be, this has got to end at some point. Do you feel that there was some kind of, maybe not, right in the forefront or very obvious, but looking back now, do you feel part of it is the fact that, you're not going to be believed because, nobody I know is going to go through some abusive, situation. But then partly the other end is it doesn't happen to a man. Like that's not possible.
right.
Do you feel looking back or even in that moment, do you feel that was part of it or no?
Yeah, I think it was. And it was a lot of those little things. It was, I'm a guy, I'm a guy, and
Yeah.
now I'm a dad. Like I didn't become a dad from love, from emotional connection. It
Yeah.
was abuse, like
Yeah.
nothing else. It was coercive control and abuse, and you know, and that, like, I never ruled out having a kid, but I wasn't really going, like, I'm an uncle of a bunch of children. So it's like, I was good with that. Like
Yeah.
like if you're an uncle of one or two, it's one thing, but I'm an uncle of, like, I want to say damn near 10. So it's like, I have four sisters. So it's like,
Yeah. Kids are
if
there.
you're, yeah. So, and I feel like there's this sort of silly, there's this, unspoken criteria. If you're an uncle or aunt of more than, like, four or five, you don't need to be a parent. You have a bunch already that hopefully are looking forward to
Looking at you.
seeing you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so, so that, and then of course there was part of that selfish side of me where it's like, damn
Yeah.
it, I spent 30 plus years trying to figure out this thing that I really wanted to do, and I didn't know how, and now I'm doing it, and now I've got to give it all up. It's not that I lost it, I gave it up. Like, no one was telling me, go away. Like, I was
Yeah.
running it, and I was like, I can't. I've got to retreat, because I'm going to take myself out, and if
Yeah.
I don't. And so I did. And that, you know it was just all those things,
Those
and
things.
then just, as I shared earlier, not being very good at standing up for myself.
Yeah.
Now it was all coming into fruition here, where it's like, I know what I'm feeling, and I do poetry, I write and things like that, but this was different. And I'm like, how in the hell am I going to verbalize
Yeah.
what I'm feeling without losing my mind?
Yeah.
How was I going to do that? And it took a long while. Now, completely different story,
Yeah.
but it took a long while, and it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Absolute nightmare.
Now, with your kid, and I'd say that from like true experience here. There's a no,
Mm.
not at the moment, but there's a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old running around the house. Well, not running yet, the other one, but
Right.
nonetheless, as I can feel just in myself, certain situations with them as they're navigating their own emotions, and I feel a twinge of like, a reaction that I wasn't ready for. It's like, whoa, like
Mm.
learn that lesson about myself, and you kind of work through that together.
Oh
But
man.
that's just a day to day, and so knowing what you just said, that like you didn't have this child out of a love situation. What does that do for you raising your child? And I don't mean like that
Right.
that you portray that on them, but like what do you feel in those moments that might be different from a parent or father, especially that didn't go through some traumatic situation to have the child? Do you feel like there's kind of a difference there, or do you feel yourself having to catch yourself more?
So that's a fascinating question because I had experienced both ends of the spectrum on that. Like I knew enough that, because of course the question is he really mine? So, that, and then there's that question, and and I learned, yeah, he is. And so, but I knew enough even prior to where it's like, if he's mine, it's not his fault. and
Right.
and I, and just but that was just more the reason for me to just an another reason for me to recover somehow
Yeah.
and get better. And and you know as it has happened, there have been those moments where he will say or do something and it'll be like, oh my god,
Yeah.
and I have to walk away, or I just or quietly stomp away because I'm just like, because I just start breaking down, and
Yeah.
I start bawling. I don't need him to see that, and I just start, and that, thankfully, that was early on, not
Yeah.
now. So it's gone now. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
I'm very very confident it's gone now, but it's definitely one of those things of like being able to say whatever happens, I'm gonna love the hell out of this child, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna show him now the importance of expressing feelings, and knowing
Yeah.
what to say, and understanding what you're saying. He's going to be 5 next month, and you know and I've been telling him the past few years, when he started understanding more and more,
Yeah.
like, why we cry and why we laugh, why we talk
Yeah.
about this, why we talk about that, and that
That's
the big
important.
rule, very very much so. And the big
Yeah.
thing I tell him: question everything, but
Yeah.
also know when to accept the answers,
Yeah.
and embrace the answers. And but the other big thing I tell him is the mistakes. It's only a mistake if you don't fix it. Just fix it. When you apologize, sometimes this is probably my favorite, because I could feel this when he says. I feel it from him when he says this. It's the apology thing. It's the this such and such, hit me or called me this at school, and they didn't apologize, so that means they meant it. And i
I love it.
I feel that with my entire my entire core, because that's one of those things I have said to my abuser. Where it's like, all of this would be easier if you just owned your stuff. If you had
Yeah.
just owned your behavior, we could be so much more civil. Like, things could be so
Yeah.
much more civil. But you continue to choose not to, unless it's at your own convenience,
Yeah.
or it helps you martyr yourself, or help you audition for something so you could hopefully win an award in your acting. And it's like, no, man, without that change behavior,
Yeah.
Nothing changes. It doesn't matter what I say to you. And because I did, I
Yeah.
owned the things I did because of what I had that I didn't know. And I owned those things and I continue to practice daily on that. Doesn't always work, but I do it.
No.
But I don't stop. I don't stop. And I tell my kid the same thing. You make a mistake, you fix it. When it comes to an apology, and I've said it to him in front of her on the phone where I've said, listen, apologies are not always words, they are action. So if
Yeah.
they don't say it, give them a chance to do
Do
better,
something. Yeah.
do changed behavior. And we keep talking. We actually just talked about that a couple of days ago, where just that exact thing, and he's listening more and more and more, and
Yeah.
he's repeating it. And so I tell him, and so when he gets sad at something, I said, baby, I'm here.
Yeah.
Try, what do you, it's a mistake, what do we do? And he'll
Yeah.
just be like, say sorry. And I'm like, okay, you can, but
What
then he ultimately gets to the fix it thing. I said, so how
Yeah.
are we going to fix it? And so,
Beautiful.
I think that kind of ties into what you were saying earlier regarding, the trendy buzzwords that people say regarding,
Yeah.
like it's okay not to be okay. It's like, okay, great. I can only hear that so much. What are we doing
What are
about
we gonna do?
it? What are we going to do now
Yeah.
about that? So that's where I say to him, "What? How are we
What
going
are
to
we
get it done?"
how are we gonna fix it?
And it's a wonderful thing. It's just
It
absolutely.
is.
It's been great, and I my hope is that the message just gets so emblazoned in him that it's just like that. He's 10, 12, 15 years old, and he just remembers that
Yeah.
moment. He's like, "Okay, I'm just going to
He'll turn
fix
it
it."
around on you, and that'll be your moment. You'll be like, "There it is.
It's
Yep,
like
yep."
must like
Whatever
my
you were mad at that moment, you're like, "I don't even care. It worked."
right. How has it been, if I may ask you,
Sure.
how has it been for you to get to this point? Hearing, because that was part of what drew me to even reach out to you with
Yeah.
regards to the relatability of all of it. So how have you? It's what you mean. 'Cause I just have my one. You have two.
Yeah.
How have you been? How have you been able to
Um,
balance it, overcome it, whatever the right word
I
is for
don't
this?
know. I don't.
Valid answer.
But
Yes.
I think that's been one of the things that I mean, it's like you said. I mean, like that you're just admitting those things and coming to face with it is that I think a lot of it for me it was the fact that the perception of just what we were talking about with the abuse is that
Mm-hmm.
perception of a male, especially in a father is this one definition, and that if you hold all of that definition of being masculine and not making mistakes and providing all those things in one very small viewpoint,
Mm-hmm.
you forget the fact that you can make mistakes, you are
Mm-hmm.
not going to have an easy time with this, all of that. um I think slowly just kind of coming to face with that, and my wife can tell you that. I mean, we've
Mm-hmm.
never argued, never complained, never did anything, but I've certainly had my moments where I just looked at her like I can't do this. Like this is hard, and even just saying that,
Yeah.
and that's with
Oh
anything, right? I
God, I
mean,
feel that.
so it could
Mm-hmm.
be it could be one, it could be two, it could be four. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, there's what you have to do. It's those moments that kind of, like I said, catch you off guard. That it's like you forget that they're two or three or whatever, and
Yep.
they don't have this tool set or the vocabulary to say what
Mm-hmm.
they need to say, but they have the emotion. They're there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? And I've certainly been in my own moments where I'm getting frustrated at them, and I'm reminded constantly that it's like they're two. That's right. That's right.
Precisely.
Um,
Precisely.
changing
Precisely.
your language, but you get so caught up in like, I missed that moment. I guess
Mm-hmm.
I just messed them up for life. Like there's all
Yeah.
those things, and we just don't talk about it enough. I mean, I could talk a lot, just about the father end of it, just what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
is. I mean, it's hard, but it's that. I mean, those conversations that you're having right now. I mean, you can tell. I mean, that's because that's what we talk about here as adults, right? And
Right. Right.
part of it stems from that nobody nobody had that conversation with you as when you were younger, or you did, but you didn't carry that through, and you didn't get the opportunity to learn what that meant. All those things. It doesn't mean that like you had terrible parents. It's just that
Sure.
in the scheme of things, of all the stuff that they had to think of,
Mhm.
that's one thing they don't remind you of. You can read 1,000 books. You're only focused on their sleeping,
Yeah.
what they should be eating at this age. They don't tell you that what happens when they don't like that you're eating.
Mhm.
All
Mhm.
the other odd situations like they don't talk about, and those are the moments that it's like that are important. You know, we just call it a tantrum. Well, what does that mean? It's a
Right.
tantrum not because they're a bad kid. It's a tantrum because they have no idea what the heck their emotions are.
Yeah. They don't
Um,
they don't know how to wield that power yet. They're
no,
they're just using it. They're just
yeah,
using that power, like, but they're not wielding
yeah,
it accordingly. And that's why I tell my kid, there's never anything wrong with what you say, but you got to remember where you are and how
yeah,
you say it, and it's going to take time. And I love what you said about the whole, you forget their age, because there have been moments where my son will say something to me, and he will say it not just so clearly but so eloquently that for this moment, it's like a glimpse into the future. It's like,
yeah,
okay, he just went from 4 to 14, just in what he said in this little sentence.
yeah,
And he'll again, he's so eloquent
yeah,
with it, and it just brings me so much joy. But that's where I have to stop myself, and then he'll just start making these funny little animal noises and start teasing me again. I'm like,
there he
there
is.
you are, there you are. But that's where I have to tell him, because even when he sees others doing it, this is so great. When I love this, because when we go out or wherever we go, and he
Yeah,
sees another person, a kid, adult, whoever, acting a certain way, and he'll just start looking and staring at them, and then he'll look at me,
yeah,
and I'll ask him one question. I'm like, is that behavior okay? He's like, no, I don't.
no,
He's like, I don't think I like that. I was like, so guess what?
yeah,
Don't do it. Just don't
yeah,
do it. And so now, so every so often he'll hear a kid or adult
yeah.
act a certain way. Daddy, was that okay? Should we do? Nope,
I love it. I love
we
it.
do not do that. I'm like, oh my goodness, keep doing that.
Yeah,
I was like, damn it, question everything.
yeah,
That's what I say.
and
So
that's
that's
good.
and so thank you
Yeah,
for that, because yeah, as fathers, more often than not, I have felt so alone in the
yeah,
fatherhood thing, and
oh
I
yeah,
have felt it. And it's funny because, well, it's a little, well, no, it's funny. I shouldn't say it's. I'm not going to diminish this. I see comedy in just about everything, even the pain. So like even the dark stuff, but like, I mean, I shared earlier. Uh, I'm the only boy. I'm the only male of
yeah,
five. So four sisters. So I grew up mainly with a female point of view,
yeah,
female perspective, which is great. But also in moments like this, as a dad, I felt very alone. It's like, well, who the
yeah,
hell's going to understand me?
yeah,
Who am I going to be able to relate to in something like this?
yeah.
It's already hard for women to share
It's already,
these
yeah,
experiences, especially as moms. And now it's like, and then here I am, like, God help
yeah,
me. How do we do this? So I really appreciate that. And this
yeah,
is that kind of thing we have to give strength to. We have to
yeah,
give that platform to. So
yeah,
thank you for that.
yeah.
I think you're doing great, man.
And it's not to take away from the true definition of postpartum. It's a whole there's a whole different
Mhm.
meaning to that. It's just the fact that you do have two sides of the story, and you have to, just like with anything else, you have to acknowledge the emotions that are there, and that's a daily task. It's not just it's hard to even hear. For me, when I like you watch people share, here's 10 tips to, cure your depression, or here's 6 steps to, kick your anxiety to the curb, or, all those things. It's like, that's not realistic, and
No,
you
no.
could apply that to every situation, parenting, the same
So,
thing. I mean, we joke and say, well, it's a lifetime responsibility. Yes.
yeah,
What does that mean? And what that means
right.
is that you're constantly having to navigate those things.